Okay, good morning, everybody from the UK. For me here, it's just about 8 a.m. I realise elsewhere in the world, it's probably very late. So, welcome to the Microsoft 365 Virtual Marathon. My name is Sharon Sumner, and I'm here to present the first session. So, I'm self-producing today. So, thanks to everybody who's been putting on such a fantastic event. I hope we're all having a great conference, and I look forward to meeting you all in person someday when that becomes available. But for now, let's crack on with the virtual event that's already been going, and we're several miles in. So, I'm Sharon Sumner, Microsoft MVP. So let's tell you a little bit more about learning as a team. First of all, let's cover a few of the slides for the marathon team. And hopefully this is where I'll get to meet you. So I should be going. I hope you are too. Fantastic sponsors making the event available. There's also a huge team of people working in the background to make events like this happen and to keep us all connected and keep our brains working. Okay, good morning everybody from the UK. For me here. Apologies. Second speaker, echo. So let's move on. We have a fantastic raffle running today, giving away 3 Oculus Quests, which I wish I had, and certainly my son is looking to upgrade. So please do copy down this bit.ly for the M365 raffle and take part. There should be 1 winner in each region. So if you're like me in the UK, get on in there. We need 5 correct answers. Really great opportunity to win some really good tech. Thanks again to those sponsors. And again, the sponsor funds and how those are being spent. So thank you to everybody for taking part and making it possible for us to give way to these great charities. So let me introduce me. As I said, I'm Sharon Sumner. I'm a business applications MVP, and I'm from Cambridge in the UK, the city of universities. I'm a massive evangelist of the Power Platform, Office 365, but I come from a place of SharePoint, so everything for me comes from SharePoint. And I do always say yes to a coffee, even if it's a virtual one. Quite happy to have a coffee anytime and chat over anything to do with the Power Platform, Office 365 or SharePoint Online. Do get in touch. This is my Twitter handle. There are 2 underscores in there, or you can find me just by searching for me. Now, my mantra is really about getting to value faster, to the degree that I'm writing a book about it later this year. What do I mean by that? I mean that in my sessions, for me, it's all about showing you end-to-end solutions that business users can follow and create. So I'm not going to get massively technical. I'm not going to deep dive into a single technical feature. And you'll find this in all of my videos on the YouTube channel and everything that I present. What I'm looking to do is to keep today's session vanilla. So it's a really simple and light solution that you can follow along, and then later you can customize. But hopefully it's enough to focus on a real business scenario and inspire you to go away and create for yourself. I don't do live demos. Everything in here is a recorded session with me talking over the top. Now, the reason for that is not just to make sure that the technology doesn't go wrong on me, but also to make sure that I can leave in some mistakes to talk through those with you. And when I give you the slide deck afterwards, or you download it from the Marathon website, you'll be able to see and rerun those video sections to be able to follow along yourself and recreate the solution, which I really hope you'll go away and do. So what are we going to cover today? So I'm going to look at using Microsoft Teams as that real pane of glass for this solution. So with 75 million daily users in Microsoft Teams, it's really important that we look at how Teams is allowing people to use the other multiple services in the platform in a real integrated way. So what we're going to do is we're going to use SharePoint Online, Power Automate, Stream, and Forms Pro in the background. Actually, I think it's just Forms, not Forms Pro, to create a solution around learning. So what we want to do is we want to define some learning paths. We want to measure completion of the learning. We want to motivate learners with some kind of leaderboard. So let's get started. When looking at a solution, we have to understand what the business goals of that solution are to be able to build something effective. So what we want to cover for this particular solution is to create training material for the entire company, so new joiners, etc., when you need to understand something across the entire company, but also be able to create team-specific training material. In my example today, we're going to look at a sales team. We want to be able to assess during the training material for understanding. So rather than anything separate from the training material, right within the videos that we're going to use, we want to bake in some assessment of the understanding of that video. And again, you'll be able to extend this massively with however it applies to you as an organization. And we need some kind of a scoring system to be able to have that leaderboard, to encourage users to take part or to mandate it if that's the type of organisation you are or the type of training that you need to get delivered. So we also then need to show the leaderboard to encourage adoption. Again, simple and accessible, no code Microsoft Teams solution. So I'm not going to code anything today. I'm going to show you how to use the tools out of the box to put all of this together in a really simple and nice way. So we're going to do this in sections so that I can talk around each of the main points, and we're breaking it down so that when you follow this through later, you can pick an individual piece of video that applies to you. So on the left-hand side here, I've got the individual steps that I'm following in this particular video. So I'm going to assume that you have a basic knowledge of these technologies and can navigate around them, but actually I'm going to show you all of the steps involved. So the first video, we're going to look at learning paths and setting those up. I actually think this should be a slightly different name for the list that we're going to use. But for this, we need to have already created the team. We're going to create the SharePoint lists, we're going to create the video channel, and we're going to add the training material. So let's jump into the video. So as you can see, I've already created a sales team in Microsoft Teams, and I'm going to jump to the files section and then into SharePoint. But not using that file, that document library, I'm going to come to the root of the site to be able to add a list. So from the new menu, I've picked create a list, and we're going to call this learning path. Actually, this is the modules within a learning path, so you could call this whatever you like. So columns that we need in here are the module names. So this is assuming that one path is going to have several modules. Excuse me. And we're going to have the score, which is going to be a number column. And we also need to know the path name itself. So we're going to add that as a line of, actually as a choice, I believe we'll add that. Oh, and we need the video link. So we're going to link directly out to a video that we're going to host in Microsoft Stream. I tend not to use titles on these SharePoint lists because title is an inherited field. We may use it for some data, but largely I tend to create my own fields so that we can use custom views. So let's add a few learning paths as choice options. And there we have our basic learning path list. So to add a couple of entries, again, let's focus around the sales learning. So the first thing that we want to cover is leads. Now I'm going to do the sales training through Dynamics 365. So we're just going to look at some basic Dynamics 365 style modules. Now the video link, it's important that you actually put in the alternate text as something useful because that's what's going to show up as the link, and I'll show you that in a second. So I'm just adding this to basic sales, and I've borrowed a video link there. We'll have to come and update that later with an actual video link. And I'm going to add a second one for opportunities. Sorry, my voice is going this morning, because it's early. Okay. So again, we're just filling in some base data. If I leave that alternate text, you'll see that we get an ugly hyperlink. So we don't want that. We want more of the first. But you can see now I've got both of these in a single learning path. So I could sort the learning path. I could group these by learning path, and it allows me to know that these are a program. So let's go and upload those videos. So we need to jump to Stream. So Stream should be available on your Office 365 tenant. It should already be deployed. And we're going to come over here and add a channel. So I'm going to call this the sales training for D365. And to note, I would have added this as a group channel directly to that Microsoft team. However, I've only just created the team, and so it's not coming up in the picker yet. So I'm just going to set this to company wide, but I would generally, if we're going to have one team doing that specific training within the team, I would generally target it to the team so that you don't have to worry about permissions later. So I'm dragging on a couple of videos that I've got in a separate window and just throwing them onto that channel that we've just created. And again, I can customize these by putting in an image on the thumbnail so that they look consistent. Selecting the video language is actually important. So these particular videos are just small videos. There's no talking on them. But if there was talking on them, picking that English language would mean that the transcript that's automatically created would come out in English. So we're going to leave these two to upload, but let's just take a quick look and show you that within here we can set the permissions on the individual video if we wanted to. We're going to use this to the share link to grab the link to the video. Even though it's not done yet, it knows where it's going to live. So once we've grabbed that link, we can then go and set that back into the main list on that watch video link. And we can do that for both leads and opportunities now that we have it. Oops, I think that started again. Okay, so let's move on to user assessment. I'm just going to go back one and make sure that I didn't miss a video there for you. That's fine. Moving on to user assessment and scoring then. So we now need to create the assessment, create the scoring, and use Power Automate to trigger once somebody has put in their questions and answers around that learning to then assign them a score. So let's get back into it. So we can see here that we've updated the video links so that from the list itself, we can click watch video, and when it's there, it will jump into that video link. It's still doing the uploading at this point. So now we need to jump to forms. So Microsoft Forms allows you to create a really simple and standardized looking assessment of that knowledge. Now, there are many ways that you could do this. I've chosen Forms because it's so end user easy and powerful. And because we can take it as a trigger that somebody has entered the data into a specific form, it means it's really easy to automate for any business user. So we're creating a question set for the sales training, and I'm calling it leads in D365. So we're just going to add a couple of questions in here just to make it easy for the user to put the data in. Obviously, these questions can be as easy or as hard as you would like. Ideally, these questions are based around the video content that we're watching on those videos that we've uploaded to Stream. And you'll see in a moment how we bring those two together. Okay, so just putting in some random options in here for the end user to fill in. Now, these questions can come up at any point during the training. I'm going to specifically target these to the end of the training. So having watched the videos, my videos are very short. We're going to be able to then ask these questions, and we're going to give a completion score. Okay, we could do way more complicated stuff in Power Automate based on certain questions, giving points, etc. So I'm going to copy the link to the form, and what I'm pointing out here is that I'm going to tick one response per person. Now, as you'll find out in one of the later videos, this turns out to be a development mistake, but we'll come across that when it happens. But we can add all kinds of options in here about notifications, about customizing any of these start dates, end dates, etc. We're going to put in a custom thank you message to say, please continue with the video. So because we may interject this at any point in the video, I'm actually going to put it in at the end, but we could have a custom message there that says, please carry on, there'll be another assessment shortly. It depends how many assessments you want within that particular training piece. Again, we still don't have our video uploaded, and we just need to refresh this a few times to go and grab it so that we can find that video. In the meantime, let's jump off to Power Automate and create an automated flow. So we're going to skip this original window and this little notification up here, and we're going to put in a trigger that is Microsoft Forms. So when a new response is submitted to the form, we are then going to save that down to a SharePoint list. So we're going to pick our sales training form, the one we just created, and we are going to pick to create an item in SharePoint. Now, at this point, it'll occur to you that you don't actually have a SharePoint list to write that to. So we need to jump back to the SharePoint site behind the Microsoft team, which we do by going to Files and then jumping to SharePoint. We're going to click the logo in the top to go to the root of the site to get the nice, easy Add New List. And in here, we're going to create a scoring list. So we need training scores. Now, in this list, we need to know who's been trained for what and how much we're going to score them for it. So we're going to need to know which module it was that they were assessed for. We need to know the learning path. And again, you could automate all this. You could bring this through from the other list that we created, but I'm showing you really simply how to just add this to a list to be able to facilitate the rest of what we're doing. So we're going to have a number column for the score, and then we're going to have a person column for the person that took the training. Because the system knows who's logged in, it can tell us beautifully in this column who that learner is. And we're just going to leave that as personal group. Okay, so we should be able to write to this list from Power Automate. So if we jump back here, we needed the URL for that, but let's pick the sales team, and then the individual list name was the training scores. So already that's able for us to pick within Power Automate. I really love how fast that is. So in the title here, we're going to put the response. We're not going to put the response ID in there. We're actually going to add an action between these two to get those responses. Because we've only been triggered by a response, the next thing we need to do is actually get that response to be able to get the individual items from it. So we can say, get the sales training response using the output of the first action, okay? And then that gives us a better breakdown in the dynamic content of the individual items that were given to us within that form. So in the title, we actually just want to put the basic training title and which training was taken. The module, again, these will have to be, I didn't put these in the form particularly as responses, so we just need to add these in manually. You're going to have a Power Automate per form. So again, we will just copy this and put this into basic sales training. The score does need to come to be whatever it is you want that score to be. And the bit that we're going to get from the responses is going to be the learner. Before we put that in, we're just going to test this by going and answering the questions. Oops, we need to actually go into preview to be able to answer these questions, or the live version. Okay, so jumping to the form itself, let's answer the questions, create a record, and test our flow goes into the list that we're targeting. So the end user is not going to end up filling it in this way. We're just doing this to make sure that our flow and our list are all working perfectly. So jumping back to the flow then, we need to add that learner in. So we're going to go back, and from the get response details, if we just pop in the responder's email, it will work out who that is as a person. Just to prove that, we're going to rerun the previous data, which means we'll get a duplicate row, but it will show you the record with that data in. And you can see as we hover, you get the proper card, and that's evaluated that as an individual. I'm logged in as the administrator, and that's the one that's popped up as who answered the training score assessment. So what we've now got is the ability to record those scores. Now what we need to do is we need to marry that up. Sorry, I don't know why it does that. Now we need to marry that up with the actual content itself. Here we go. Okay, I feel like I've missed a slide there. So, and I'm sure it maybe is covered in this one. So what we also need to do is we need to present this information back to the end users so that they can actually go and take an assessment for us. So we're going to do this again within the SharePoint site behind the Microsoft team. We're going to create a page called the learning page, and we're going to put on this page both the scores and the learning path so that they can go and click through and easily take those assessments for us. So here we go, 2 useful lists for that end user. Once we've created that SharePoint page, we can easily copy this page address and nip into Teams and add this as a tab. Now, interestingly, they updated the SharePoint tab add-in to allow you to pick pages. So if we click on this, it's going to offer us the SharePoint pages. And so because this learning page was here, I have tried to click this. And this is what I was saying to you about leaving in the mistakes. It's not a mistake, it's just a quirk. But this page is actually not pickable. I can't actually click on it. So I could hover over it, but I can't select it and then hit save. So I'm going to back out of that. Just go back to my page and make sure that it was in fact published, which it was, which means it should show up. But again, that might just be too soon for it to appear in this list here. So while we can see it in the list, for some reason, we can't select it. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this link at the top here called Add Page, which we can do at any time anyway, just by adding in the page URL. So we now have our learning page at the top, and again, we could call this whatever we want, but this gives the end user within that team setting access to jump into those videos. Now, this is where we need to get those videos fixed and put the assessments back into them. So once we've got our learning page for allowing people to click through and take part in those learning paths, we then need to make sure that we can, and this is the one I thought came before that one, we can add that learning material into Stream itself. So back to Microsoft Teams, and we can see that our Stream uploads have now happened, so our videos should be live. If we jump back to that learning page, we should then be able to click through on the watch video links which come from the list. Okay, so now we have our videos. So over on the right hand side here, you can see that we have a tab called Interactivity. So in here, we just click Add Form. We go and get the URL for our sales training form. So we're going to copy this URL. Don't forget, we've set the permissions on this to make it available to people in our team. And we're going to fill this in to say what the name of the form is. Now, this actually appears in the interactivity section. And again, you'll need permissions on this area to be able to add these interactivities in. And then we get the option of putting this as a position on the timeline, which is genius. So effectively, we could pick 31 seconds and take a test here and take a test again at the end if we wanted to. For what we're going to do, again, let's keep it simple, let's keep it vanilla. We're going to add the assessment at the end. Excuse me, here comes. Okay, so now when the user gets to the 47-second mark, you should see it dynamically jump to the form. Here we go. And we're now loading Microsoft Forms. Now, this takes a minute because, if you remember, I told you there was a mistake in earlier. I've already taken this assessment as me. So what it's doing is it's evaluating whether or not I've already taken the assessment, and it says I've already submitted a response. So when you're developing, I would always go to the settings and turn that off. We might want to turn that on once we're in the real world, but while we're developing, let's leave that on. When we'd have gone back to this, it would actually have already showed the little eyeball that turns up here that says we have been to that point and we've viewed that form response. To be able to retake it, I would have had to reset this interactivity. So what that gives us is the ability to have an assessment at the end of the video. And if you remember, we've set this assessment to be able to record a score once we've done that. So again, very simple solution. Now we need to test it. So let's just follow that all the way through. So we're going to click on a video link. And we're going to get to the end. The form should appear exactly like this. We can answer the questions based on the information that we've just learnt. We hit submit. And there we are. Please continue with the video now. We have a continue to video link already in stream, and it will jump back to the video itself. So the learner has taken the assessment, and we know therefore that they've finished that piece of training. Okay, so we now have two records because I redid the assigning to the page. So we can now see, and we can play with this list to our heart's content. If we want to group it by learner, for example, we can just drop down and do the group by. So we could play with this page and make it look how we want it to look based on the information that we have here. But really what we're looking to do is to provide that feedback of your current score. And we could change that view to only show yours for the training scores. But really we want to gain a little bit of competitive leaderboard type mentality to the people that are taking these tests and show these users as they're learning. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use the data that we've generated to create a leaderboard. The other thing that we're going to do, which is important, is to create an organisation-wide list. So to do that, we're going to need to update the flow so that not only are we going to write to a local list that tells us how the local modules within our sales training are going, but we're also going to replicate that to a master list so that we could have master list doing the leaderboard so that we've got a company-wide assessment of how everybody's doing. And it's better to consolidate all of the smaller data sets into the larger one to do the reporting from, because you can always filter that data back out, whereas having to add in a data set for each leaderboard is far more complicated. So let's take you through getting this done. So we're going to go to the learning page, which I've added a header and done a few more tests. So you can see there's a few more scores in here. And we're going to also jump to the organisation-wide team and jump into SharePoint from there. So again, you would need to have the right permissions to be able to edit this. I've created a learning paths org-wide, and in here we can pick the different types of learning paths. So we could have a general piece of learning around the organisation. And also I've updated the flow, as I just said, to be able to create an item, not just in the sales team, but also in the organisation-wide list. Now, I could have done that as a trigger in many ways. For this example, I've just chosen to be able to update it in that organisation-wide list. So I now have every piece of learning from that sales team escalating to the organisation-wide list. So then if we use Power BI desktop, we can go and grab the data from the organisation-wide list and do the reporting from there. Excuse me. So we're going to point to SharePoint Online to go and grab that list as the data source. Once we've got that data source, it's going to ask us to authenticate. Obviously, we have to have the permissions to be able to access that data. So we're going to pick this list here. If I copy that, paste it in here, but take it back to, actually that'll error, and I'll need to redo that. because it doesn't need the list name specifically here. It's looking for the site name. So we're going to authenticate against, the site collection there. That might give us an error and we'll have to do a retry on that. I'm going to copy that password off screen. And again, I'm just showing you the exact steps that you'll need to walk through here in case you're following along. Once we've got a connection, we then should be able to pick that list data. Yeah, I thought that would happen. Okay, let's retry that. By the magic of video. There you go. And you should see the lists available within that SharePoint site. We're going to pick the learning scores. And it's going to go and grab the data for us. Now, Power BI will update that data source on a regular basis. But what we're going to do is we're going to add into our flow, and I'll show you it in a second. We're going to add into our flow the ability to update that data source once we've got a new entry in the list. So as you can see, I don't know if any of you are Power BI people, but in this video at the end here, you could see that what that did is it brought in every type of field from that learning scores data set so that we could then build some visuals off that. So I wish it wouldn't do that. So let's start using the leaderboards. And what happens in here is we have a bit of fun with this name. If you remember, we put in the learner's name dynamically with this lovely card that when we hover over it, we get to see it. Now, to combat the fact that Power BI couldn't give us a single text field name, what I've had to do is go back and put in a single column in the flow to be able to take the text from this field and pop it into this field. So I think I've used display name, I believe, to put in there. So as far as the list is concerned, that is just a text field. And if we go back to the flow, you can see I did get user profile. Sorry, we go to the top, there it is. I did get user profile and I put in here the administrator's name. So I've in the user profile action, I just looked up the person that filled in the form and it gave me more details so that in the create item, I could write that particular text field. Hopefully that's stuff you've all done before. Again, happy to answer questions on that if you want to see specifically how to do that. But what that did then is that gave us the report name column as a text field so that we can group, sort, filter, etc. within Power BI itself. So then once we've got all of that data, and you should have been able to see in the background there that we had the refresh data source at the end, we can, at the end of that flow, we can now put some pretty pictures on here that maybe looks at score by person. However it is you want to look at the data for a leaderboard. So to get a leader, we need to see who's doing better. Once we have created a report, we then need to publish it to be able to then bring it back to the learning page as an embedded element. So it's really easy in SharePoint to add Power BI. We literally publish it, and in this instance we can publish it to the workspace, any workspace, and I think I'll just do it to my default one. And then let's pick this one. And then what we'll do is we will then surface that within the learning page. Now, ideally, at this point, I would have remembered to click the link and get the URL, but I think I'm going to have to come back here and do that. So we can see that it got published, so we know it's pickable. If we now edit this page, we should be able to add in the Power BI web part, which for reference is Power Space BI. I always put this and I never get it. It's actually this, Power BI. And we can bring that report directly in. So we get a bit more of a learning kind of leaderboard feel to the data. So as you can see, I need the URL. So the easiest way to grab this is just to publish again, because it gives you it on the screen, and we can tell it just to replace this data, just to grab the link that it's going to give us any second. There we are. We're going to click on the open link, and that gives us the report. So we're going to grab this, we're going to jump straight back into here and put this in the report link. We're going to pick the report section. The report section is default for us. We're just looking at the entire page rather than a single piece of the report. And then we're just going to republish this page, jump back into Teams and make sure that we can see that data coming through as a report. So as we refresh this page, and there's our report. So there's the basics of adding that report with their column name into Power BI and then publishing that and making it available within our learning page. So let's take this a little bit further, excuse me, let's see what that looks like. And let's look at this data refresh that I was telling you about with Power BI. So you can see that I've made more of a leaderboard look and feel. I'm not the most graphical person in the world. I'm far more functional. And you can see that I've added quite a few scores to be able to put the Mr. Tests a Lot and another tester into our list. So the user experience looks from that page. We jump to the video. We can see that I've already viewed this particular form. But we're allowing multiple fill-ins, so I can just jump to that point in the video and take the test. We know that this should be adding to both the local list of scores and to the organization-wide list of scores. And we can see here that I've got this refresher data set at the bottom of that flow. So we're just going to get into the correct flow so I can show you that running. And it failed. Right, okay. So what I did here is I went and republished that data and I didn't update. And you can see when we get a GUID in here, rather than a nice name, that generally means that it can't resolve. So I didn't have the right data set picked because I moved it. And so I'm going to rerun that failure. And you can see there that I'm adding to both lists and then refreshing the data set so that the data set should always be up to date on that learning page, leaderboard style data for us. So once we've filled in that data, we should see that the administrator, I think, role should have gone up from, it went up to 450. It was from 350 to 400, but because we rerun it, it's gone up to 450. So the first time it added the item to the list, but it didn't update the data set, and that was the failure, which is why we had 2 items added. So from a user point of view, they would have watched the video, they would have taken the score, and they would have come back in here and seen that their particular pile of books would have got bigger and how they're competing with others. Again, further down the page, we've got all of the list. But as you get more people in the team, the list of actual scores starts to get a bit unwieldy. So you may not actually want that on the page. You may just want the indicative solution showing you the individual stack of books for everybody as part of that leaderboard experience. So what do we do when we want to add a new video, when we want to move this solution on? So I would never show you a solution that is difficult to update. So let's show you exactly how this gets updated. So we want to be able to add a second learning path. Now we've already added it in our list for these 2. So let me just add another one. I'm going to cheat and use a copy of one of the other videos. But what we do is we come to the learning path and we add a new record. So that we're in the sales team and we're saying this is going to be a new piece of learning around contacts within sales. Again, we're going to stick to our 50 scoring. Our learning path is going to still be basic sales. And we're going to save that without a video link until we've got a video link. We then need to jump to Microsoft Stream, back to the channel itself. Oops, some sessions expired. So we're going to jump to My Content and to the channel. I'm going to pick the D365 sales channel. I'm going to drag in a new piece of training. So again, I think I'm copying the video and we're going to call it contacts. We can even add the icon again if we want to. So we're going to grab that sharing link while it's uploading that video. And we're going to come back here and add in that video link with the watch video text. So this is step 1, video content is available from a learning path. So that's now available from the learning page dynamically because that's SharePoint and it's going to update. We now need to jump to forms and create a specific questionnaire for this video. Nice thing about forms is we can just look at the sales training one and create a copy. We could then jump in here and you can see just how quickly I'm creating the next set of questionnaires and the entire training experience. So we're going to change this to be contacts in D365. And we could very quickly, I'll just change one of the questions because you don't want me to be here all day, just showing you how quickly this goes together. We're going to look at the sharing link for that to be able to pop that into the stream. We're going to jump back to Microsoft Stream. Oh, we're going to do the flow first. Okay, so in Power Automate, we have the same ability that we have in Forms, where we can take a previous flow and copy that. So if we jump to My Flows and take the basic sales opportunity flow and do a save as, we just change this to contacts on the end. I probably should have removed copy of, but you get where I'm going. And we're going to jump into here. We then need to make some changes. Oh, we do need to turn it on because they're always turned off by default, but let's make some changes first. So we're going to pick the contacts training. This one is a mistake. I should have changed that because that list of responses now needs updating. So there are several points in this flow where we just need to update. So you should go back and repick all of these elements from the dynamic list just to make sure that everything is going to work. But I'll show you that in a second because it actually does fail. And again, we're going to go to the same data set and we're writing to the same lists as previously. So we're going to come back out, we're going to turn that on, and we're going to go and add this to the video itself. If we just close that. And we're still uploading. So we're going to jump. Oh, we're just going to wait for that to upload. Actually, it doesn't take very long because it's about a 4 or 5 minute upload for a 1 minute video. We're going to grab the form link and come back to the video and add the form to the video. This is just showing you live how quickly it takes to upload. It's not very long at all. In fact, I think this one, it does jump. There you go, 96%. It's really getting there now. And then you can just directly publish from here. And you can see that the thumbnail is still processing on that particular one. So we're going to hit publish to be able to jump to the video, which we're just going to do from here. Refresh this page a couple of times. It's still, once it's uploaded, it does have to process the video to then make it live. So you just need to give it probably about the same amount of time as it took to upload. There we go. We can see it now. We're going to go to interactivity, add a form, and paste that URL that we just got from the form that we've just copied. We're going to change this one to be contacts. And we're going to put it in at, this is 1 minute 48. So we're going to pop it in here, add to the timeline so that that's then available at the end. So within Microsoft Teams, we can now jump to the learning page and we can see the third contacts video. Clicking through takes us to, I didn't update the link. Let's jump back and update the link in SharePoint. If you remember, I copied the link, but I didn't go and change it. Here. Okay, back to Teams. I'm going to refresh this page. And we should now be able to jump to that video. Jump to the end to take the assessment. I didn't change that opportunity there, but you can see this is the one with contact in, so we know it's the right form. Just put in some test data. And you see now on the right hand side the transcript tab has appeared. That's because it's finished processing the video fully, albeit there are no words in it, so there is no transcript. So ideally this 450 here would have updated. So let's refresh the page and see if it's just a matter of time. Still not updated. So let's jump into the flow and see where this went wrong. And I guarantee that this always goes wrong if you didn't replace all of those values and rehook up the flow to be able to look locally at its own variables. So we can see that we don't have the item in the list. So we're going to jump into the flow, refresh this and show you the failure. There it is, it's failed. Let's jump in. And we can see that we failed on the get user profile. That's unusual. Oh, that's again because we've not passed in the details correctly. So let's edit that. And within here, this responder's email address is not correct. So we need to pick it from this get response details. Now we would have to do that in each of those elements there. So that one clearly I missed. So we've come back, we're now running it through and it's going to fail again. And I think that's because we've got that from the response details and the response details hasn't been repicked. So we would edit this one here and get that list of responses from the one above. So again, it's not completely rewriting the flow, but it is just hooking it back up again with the right variables. So then you can see once I did get that right, we came in here and we've increased to 500. And that's how easy it is to add the next learning path item. So once you've got all of the prerequisites in place, we can now add each of those learning paths, and please do test before you go live to make sure that you haven't got any of those little gems that I did in there. So did we meet the solution goals? Training material for company-wide policy, tick. Create team-specific training material, most definitely. We assessed the users during the training for understanding, created a scoring system, showed the leaderboards to encourage adoption, and it's simple and accessible, no-code Microsoft Teams solution. I realise I'm 30 seconds ahead of you, but let's call that to a close so that you can ask any Q&A, and I will jump into the team chat and see if anybody has asked any questions. I don't think we have anything just yet. Okay, in fairness, I need to wait 30 seconds for you to know to ask questions. Okay, so quite happy for any of you to get in touch. This is my LinkedIn site. Via Twitter, or come along to my blog where I'll probably blog this solution as well for you to be able to walk through. If you need any help at all implementing this, reach out to me. During the whole COVID crisis, I've been doing community out of hours, so you can get in touch with me anytime after sort of 5 or 6 p.m. I often have a drink with some of the community in the evenings, or I can get in touch with you at weekends. If you're stuck on anything like implementing these solutions, do reach out. Always happy to help anybody in the community get over a hurdle, answer questions, or help you troubleshoot anything that's going wrong in your solution. I'm just going to give that a little while for anybody to ask any questions. And then I will conclude the session. I will just look up for you who is next. Microsoft 365. See, apologies. So next up, it looks like you have Jeff Teeper, who I can't really compete with, who's going to be doing a keynote for you at the top of the hour. So I'm sure everybody will be jumping to mile 1 to be able to see that. Lily, thank you so much for the feedback. A link to the channel where we can find the recordings. Yes, so again, there will be there is a YouTube channel that I'm sure is available on the Microsoft 365 site that will allow you to see who has each of those presentations. I've also submitted this slide deck, but if you have any problems getting in touch with the guys and getting this content at all, just ping me and I will send you that content. Anybody else got any questions that I can help with, concerns, experience within each of those tools and how it all comes together that you want to talk about? We have got literally about 5 minutes where we can just chat. Okay, we don't have anything coming through. Let me have a think about what I normally get asked. So usually it's questions around permissions and how to get everything working cohesively for everybody in every team. So a lot of this has to do with trial and error and making sure that you have all of the right tools to be able to put those pieces together. So your organization may or may not have turned on Stream. So that's something that you need to make sure that the organization has before you start trying to build this solution. We also maybe you can't administer within your teams or create lists and libraries on the team site. So you do need to be a contributor, therefore a member of the team, ideally an owner of the team. For Power BI, we need to be able to have access to read the data, which you normally do have, but you'll need a Power BI Pro license to be able to create the Power BI reports and then to embed them and edit SharePoint pages as well. So as well as a little bit of skill set exposure, like you saw, nothing there was particularly rocket science. It's just knowing how to link all of those pieces together and making sure you've got the right permissions to do that. So if you do get stymied at any of those key points, it's worth just checking that you have got the right permissions to be able to access that data before you start blaming your own ability to pull and push the data into the right places. So always worth going through with a really light couple of fields, proof of concept through each of those elements before kind of building out fantastic forms and fantastic videos, etc. It's always worth just doing a really light proof of concept to make sure that you've got all of the pieces that join that together and that all of the members of your team can see the content that you've put together so that the permissions are correct in that way too. So I would say proof of concept all the way. And with any proof of concept, the idea is that that can effectively get thrown in the bin, or in your case, you would build it out to be the full solution. So you would add more columns, you would add more functionality in the forms once you've got the basic set of building blocks in place. Okay. So we are now at 8:53. So I'm going to give you 7 minutes to jump off to go and see Jeff, as I will. And I hope everybody has a great day. I hope you're having a fantastic conference. And thank you so much for joining me at the Microsoft 365 Virtual Marathon.